remember when we were talking about parts of the plant, and we discussed how there were two main parts of a plant. If my hand is the dirt, all of this is the shoot system because it shoots up into the air. And all of this is what we call the root system. Well, today we're going to talk about the root system, and we'll come back to this dandelion plant that I pulled out of the garden earlier. But what is the job of the roots, the root system of the plant? Well, the roots have two main jobs. One of the important jobs of the root system is to hold the plant in place. Because if there were no roots and it couldn't hold on to the soil, the dirt that the plant is growing in, a big wind, a small wind, could knock over. Imagine if it was just this, balanced on top of some dirt. Thunk. It would go right over as soon as a little wind came by. Or an animal came to eat one leaf, it would pull the whole thing over, the plant would die. So the roots help to anchor the plant in place. And one of the charts that I like that helps to remind us of this is this called Hands That Hold. Now, these roots are made to look like kind of creepy looking hands, but they are holding this plant in place. They're holding on to the soil, and that gives the tree or any plant the strength to stay where it is. That's why it's so hard to pull. Ever try to pull up weeds? Oh my goodness, they're anchored in there. So the roots are anchoring that plant in place. It's an important survival mechanism for the plant. And it also holds the soil in place to prevent the soil from getting washed away. So it actually helps the soil and it helps the plant. So those roots are very important. Another thing that roots do, that is what we often think of roots for, is of course that they absorb the water and the minerals in the soil. So absorb just means to suck up, and the best example that I just love is a dry sponge. So I have this, actually it's one of the table sponges, a dry sponge here, and I'm going to put just a corner. I'm actually going to scoot a little closer so you can see this part. I will probably fall out of camera, but you'll be able to see. I'm just going to put a corner in, a little corner of the sponge into the water, and only that tip of the corner is going in, but I'm seeing, and I'll pull the sponge up so you can see it better too, I'm seeing that the sponge is absorbing that water. This is a lot like the way a root does it. It absorbs the water all the way up so it can go into the stem and the leaves and help with photosynthesis and the plants making the food. So I put just this tiny bit of the sponge right about there in the water. And the water moved all the way up here on the sponge. If I held it in there for longer, it would actually go the rest of the way. Try that with a dry sponge or a dry paper towel. It can be hard to just put in that corner, but see if you can do it. You'll really see how it absorbs, which is just the way a root absorbs water out of the soil. I like this chart too. In this chart we see the roots are sort of acting like little straws, and they suck up the water. And this is a piston pump, but it's just a way to create that suction that pulls the water up through the stems and all the way out to the leaves, and of course the flowers and fruits and seeds as a plant develops those as well. So pulling the water from the root system up into the shoot system. And this is why when we water a plant, we know not to water the leaves. We don't water the stems. No, we know we want to put that water here on the dirt, on the soil, around the plant, because we know that the root system is underneath that soil, and that's where the plant is going to get its water. So we have our root system with its two main jobs. Now I'm going to scoot over. I wanted to be close enough so you could see, especially with that sponge. But now I'm going to be using my chart here. We're going to talk about the parts of a root. Now I brought two roots. One is my carrot. We're all familiar with a carrot. The carrot I got I think this one I actually got at the grocery store. And the shoot system was here. It had green leaves and petioles actually right there. Here's where the dirt was when it was growing. You could see just a little bit the top of the root, mature part of the root peeking through. All of this and more, and we'll talk about what that more is in a moment, was growing underground. We eat the roots of the carrot plant, so we're very familiar with this kind of root. This is a plant we're more familiar with from the shoot system. This is a dandelion. So we've got our stem, our leaves, we've got a flower here, and it looks like we're getting ready to create some fruit and seeds, fruit being the part that contains the seed, not necessarily the part that you eat, but the part that contains the seeds, if you're talking as a botanist. But we're going to look at this part, the root system. This I was able to dig up, so we got to keep a lot of these important parts that are often lost when you pull a plant up. So I'm going to, on this paper, draw a root. And I'm going to have you do the same thing. So watch what I'm doing. I'm just going to make a very simple root. I'm just going to make it like a big, long carrot. So I'm going to use a lot of my paper. Please don't, I'm going to move this up a little bit. Please don't make it too small because it makes it very hard for you to label it. So I'm going to ask you to label it. So I'm going to come down. I'm going to come almost like that, okay? Like a curvy V or part of a triangle. And just give it that general shape. Now I'm going to start down here at the bottom because it's a very important part of the root. You have to, you can't really see it on here. I can't see it either, so it's not about the camera. But down at the bottom is what we call the root tip. Just the very smallest, tiniest, the baby part of the root. This is the newest part of the root. This is the part of the root that is growing. This is the newest part. It's the most delicate part. So this is called the root tip. And all of this bottom part of the root is a root tip. Root, R-O-O-T. Tip, just the way it sounds, tip. T-I-P. Like the tip of your finger. It's the tip of the root. Now on this root tip though, because it is the baby, it's the tender, delicate part of the root, and it's pushing through soil. Now we look at soil and we just see soft dirt, but if you're a teeny tiny root, look at that soil real closely, and you can see there are some sharp edges, there are tiny rocks, there are things that could damage the delicate part of a root. So the root tip is protected by something called a root cap. And I think of this root cap protecting something delicate like your helmet protects your head. When you go out on your rollerblades or your bicycle, you wear a helmet. Well, the root tip wears a helmet too, because it's also something very important. It's important for the root to grow. So I'm going to crunch down here and I'm going to write root cap. Like a cap you would wear on your head. Root cap. The root cap fits over the root tip. That's why they're both looking at the same part, but the root cap is a piece that fits on the root tip, a part. It's a part of the root. Then, this part right behind the root cap and the root tip, this is a really important part of the root. It's got a big fancy name. It's called the region of elongation. But hold on, region just means area. We live in the region of Southern California. The area, the part of it. This is the part of the root, the region of the root. Elongation, this is the part of the root that grows longer. That's all it means. Elongation, the region of elongation. And what that means is, when the root is growing longer, this is the part where it grows longer. Now when we grow, when you're growing, I'm done. When you grow, your arms and your legs and your body and your nose and your ears, they all grow at the same time. Imagine if you were a plant, that wouldn't happen that way. Part of you would stay the same size and part of you would keep growing. So think if everything was set at the same size it is now, but your neck kept growing. Or imagine your body stayed the same and your arms and legs kept growing till they were as long as mine. That would not really work on a person. And animals grow all at the same time, roughly speaking. Plants, though, have certain areas that stop growing and very specific areas that grow. So this is the part of the root that grows longer. So we call it the region of elongation. I'm going to make a little mark here to say I'm talking about all this area. Now here's how you spell it. And yes, it is the part that grows longer, but you can't label it that. I do want you to use the words region of elongation. So region is R E G I O N. Region of, that's just OF, elongation. So I'm just going to start with the letter E. And I'm going to write the word long, L-O-E-L-O-N-G, elong, A, and shun. Remember, shun is very often T-I-O-N. So T-I-O-N. Region of elongation, the part that grows longer. Now, right behind this is a very important part. Now, well, let me show you here first, and I'll explain why it's different on these two. The region of elongation has to continue growing longer. In some area, in some roots, this is a longer part, and some it's just a very tiny area. And as it grows, then it starts to anchor itself. Because we need something to anchor, because if the whole root was just, if it was just like this carrot, as the root's pushing down, it might meet a rock or something, and it would actually push the plant up. So if I'm growing down, up, I'm still growing, now I'm getting pushed out of the soil. So the root needs a way to anchor, to hold on to the growth down into the soil that it's already made. Roots have root hairs. They are not made of the same substance as the hair on your head, but they have a very similar look. Oh, I should have done it in blue, that's all right. I'm gonna do it in red. So these are my root hairs. Now, root hairs, this is a two-dimensional drawing, but roots obviously are three-dimensional things. It's like a little skirt. It's like a skirt around the outside, kind of like a little hula skirt all around the root. Now, if you look at our dandelion, it's got lots and lots of root hairs. You can see that they are denser up here because they're really holding in place here. If you get down to the root tip, there are actually no root hairs down here, down at the very, very bottom, because this has, right here is the root tip, root cap, region of elongation, all of this is the root hairs. The carrot had root hairs on it, but remember what the root hairs do, they hold the root in the soil. So when this carrot was pulled out of the soil, those delicate little root hairs got pulled off. In fact, if you pull out a dandelion root, and you're not as careful as I was, I actually crunched the soil off it like we do when we're transplanting, you will get very few root hairs, if any, left either. So these are the root hairs. Root, same word, R-O-O-T, hairs, H-A-I-R-S. And sometimes they go on, they're all over the place. And you can have a lot of root hairs depending. Usually they go for a while. Okay, so there's your root hairs. Now, we're going to look at the next part of the root. Remember I said this is the region of elongation, where the root gets longer. Now, a root can get fatter. In fact, carrots do that. That's one of the things that they are very noticed for. And that's why they have so much nutrients for us, because of how thick they grow. They can get fatter, but they do not get longer. In this area, we call this the mature root. This is where the root is done growing. And I'm just going to put these little cross hatches on it to differentiate it. And it often won't have the same delicate coloring of the other parts. So this is the mature root, the part that's not going to grow anymore. Mature. The mature root is behind the root hairs. This will not grow longer, although it can get wider. Now, the last thing I want to show you as parts of the root is something that I need my carrot for, because it's inside the root. So I'm going to take my carrot and I'm going to cut inside the carrot. I'm going to use my knife, make a bridge, push and saw, put my knife away. Inside is a circle. I'm going to bring it close. There's a circle in there called the vascular cylinder. And the vascular cylinder is a bundle of tubes, sort of like little straws if you want to think of them, but they carry the water from the root up to the shoot system. They carry the food that's produced in the shoot system down to the root. So they're like a little highway system. We call them a bundle of vessels. Those little tubes are called vessels. The xylem and phloem, we'll talk more about those another time. But they help produce the exchange between the root system and the shoot system. They're a way that they can trade what their jobs are, how they can share that with one another and be part of the whole. So, I can't flip my two-dimensional drawing over, so what I'm going to do instead, I'm going to make my vascular cylinder here, as if we've just sort of popped it out of the top, kind of pulled that out by itself. So here's our vascular cylinder. Remember, that's inside. Now, true roots will all have a vascular cylinder. If you cut a white potato in half, you will not see a vascular cylinder. That's because a white potato, even though it's underground, is actually part of the stem system. It's an underground stem. However, if you cut in half a yam or sweet potato, you will find a vascular cylinder. You'll see that circle because those are true roots. So it has to do with its function for the plant. So this is the vascular, V-A-S-C-U-L-A-R, cylinder. Cylinder like the geometric shape, like the shape of a can of soup. That's a cylinder. And essentially, although it tapers to the end, that's what this is shaped like. Cylinder, C-Y-L-I-N-D-E-R. These are parts of a root. So here we have the root cap, the root tip, the region of elongation, the root hairs, the mature root, and the vascular cylinder. I'm going to put this line a little bit closer. I gave myself plenty of room. I'm going to move this a little closer so you can see it also. So please do a drawing of the parts of the root. If you would like to do a drawing, this would be optional. If you would like to do a drawing of the chart with the root hands that hold, or if you want to do the one with the piston pump where the water's coming up from the roots inside into the rest of the tree, you could do that too. But this part I am going to assign that you do parts of a root, draw it. It's not hard. You're just going to make the root cap and the root tip. You're going to leave blank this region of elongation. You're going to draw the root hairs, have fun. Then you're going to draw the mature root, and the vascular cylinder is just a little oval, and then some little ovals inside. That's all I did. As long as you get the general idea, and you're going to put parts of a root. Label it. Remember, use the whole space on your paper so you have room to label it, and enjoy it. And take a look. Next time you're having carrots, or potatoes, or sweet potatoes, or radishes, beets, take a look and see if you can find that vascular cylinder. Ask mom or dad or grandma to show you so you can see what's inside and enjoy roots. Thank you.